This episode is brought to you by oneof10.com.
All right, guys. So I have just started a new job in a roundabout way. I've started doing something a little bit new with my business very recently. And it's basically moving a little more into the kind of strategy production side of working with a particular channel. And this is obviously an area that you guys have a lot more experience in than me. And basically, I would just love to have a chat as someone who's relatively new to this space, who feels like they've picked up a lot of information about how to do this thing well. I would basically love to kind of test my hypothesis of the things that I've started doing in terms of strategy with this channel and pick your brains on whether I've overlooked anything. And really for anyone who's listening to this, to get a sense of what people should be doing if they're looking to revolutionize, maybe too strong a word, but to really upgrade what they're doing with their channel, to start being more intentional with their strategy, to be, basically figuring out where they should take their channel if they want to start growing it even quicker than it is, say, currently growing. When you start working with a new channel, what is it that you're thinking about? How far ahead are you looking when you first join up? What are the day one or, week one, month one priorities that you have when you are joining a channel and trying to help grow their channel faster?
I would say at the beginning, what you're doing, even if you're producing, is you're doing something very similar to what a strategist would do, which is taking in like an overview of the channel, what's working, what's not. So what formats are you already doing? Which ones are growing the channel? Which ones are not really working? Asking like, what's taking you guys the most amount of time to do? And basically seeing if there are types of videos that they could be making more regularly that would get them a lot of views with less effort. And I think maybe the underlooked, or rather the overlooked part of this is, how much time and money have you got to put into making videos? Because it's easy to sometimes come in as a strategist and say like, you should travel to Paris to make this kind of grand video, instead of being like, look, realistically, you've got 3 hours on Thursday. So that's the starting point, even before you get into all the nitty-gritty of production.
Yeah, I think my approach is very similar to Gwilym's. When I start working with someone, it's very much getting a lay of the land, understanding what's working, what's not. I usually grill my client on like, who is your true target audience? Because sometimes they kind of have like this vague description of their target audience. And I really like to understand who is it specifically, like what problems do they have? How could we appeal to them? What kind of content could we create that alleviates that problem, as in an example? I just like to get more of an understanding of who we're trying to appeal to, because that really affects the ideas that you create, the titles, the thumbnails, what value you provide. I mean, it's pretty much everything. And so the more you can really force your client to kind of like just think, because a lot of people don't think really, they're kind of like, oh, I like this topic, and they just make videos about it. And that's kind of when you start to see this huge range of viewers. Like you get the 500K view video, and then you get the 80K video. And it's like, there's a difference there. There's a reason why that's happened. And so really kind of like digging down and say, okay, I understand why you want to help that particular person. And we can see that in these several videos, that's why they got more views, because you use the correct language, or you helped them with that particular pain that they had and gave them a solution that was packaged in the title and thumbnail in a very unique way. And a lot of the times I spend time just speaking with my client and asking things like, what's your unfair advantage? Like, what do you have that other people don't have who are competitors? Is it that you have specific knowledge that no one else has? Do you have specific stories that you can use to relate to other people that no one else has? Can you use your brand or people that you've worked with? Do you have more money that you can invest into other areas? Do you have more time that you could contribute to these video ideas compared to other entrepreneurs that are making these types of videos, or whatever it may be? I really like to get a lay of the land and basically just get as much of their information into my own brain as possible. And then I look at the data and do exactly what Gwilym said, which is get an idea of what's working, what's not, and what we could do more of.
I think often creators get stuck inside their own head with maybe what's useful to them or interesting to them. So one channel I worked with recently, the purpose was to get new viewers interested in a topic and to funnel them towards, courses and more educational stuff. And this person was making videos on very niche, nerdy subtopics of the whole field and kind of packaging them towards beginners, but being very vague. And talking about processes rather than outcomes. So if you were to use like a gym example, it would be like the best like machines to use in the gym or something like that. And they weren't going broad enough and targeting the things that people really care about, which would be something like the 5 best exercises to do in the gym to grow your legs or something like that. So yeah, just getting them out of their own head and being like, what's really going to appeal to the type of person you want watching, and getting more invested into a relationship with you.
Awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, that's super helpful. Okay, one follow-up question really. Well, let's do a hypothetical situation, which is hypothetical for you too, but is perhaps exactly the scenario that I'm in. In this case, let's say you've got a channel that it's still like relatively small, this channel, like, 10, 15K subscribers, but they have had 1 or 2 videos that have done really well and have gone to, like 100K plus, semi-viral, especially for the size of channel that they are. And this is still quite early on. Like the channel is still relatively new, and but it's already had a couple of these successes. How early would you say, with channels that you work with, do you batten down the hatches and think, right, this is the format that works for us. Let's now like really lean into trying variations of this specific thing. I suppose it's like an A. Is that the route that you go? Do you take that as your approach? That's our signal. This kind of thing works. Let's just go for it. Versus thinking equally, this channel is still very new. There's a lot of other directions it could go, and there's maybe 5 or 6 other phantom topics we haven't made yet, which could end up doing equally well or better. Do you start looking that way and start looking at adjacent channels in the niche, and or even other channels that are just doing interesting things, and trying to figure out, yes, okay, maybe we've got these like 1 or 2 outlier successes, but how much should we be funneling all our resources into emulating that, or should we be splitting our time between that and potential new styles? Or should we actually think, cool, park that, let's move on to an entirely new style based on other channels in our niche?
So I'm basically 90% sure Jamie's going to say the same thing here. I think the correct answer in most cases is you allocate the budget of your production capacity to experimentation, maybe like 25%. So if you're doing 4 videos a month, 1 video is an experiment, and you can tweak this depending on, how new the channel is, how much risk you want to take. And then you use the remaining 3 videos to do what's worked and do minor experimentation with that format. So getting your steady guaranteed views in, and then and building a base of viewers who are like, we know what we're getting from this channel. And then you use the remaining 1 video a month to run experiments. If you were more risk averse, you'd run experiments based on other outliers. If you were had more of an appetite for risk, it would be based on just like your own wild ideas, and you just do a mix and match of that. It's a bit like deciding what you're gonna cook every evening. Like, do you want to just have lasagna every night, or do you want to have lasagna and then like your usuals, and then every now and then do a little bit of an experimentation, and then add those new things to your repertoire? What would you add to that, Jamie?
Yes, it is a very similar answer. I think I always decide how much I want to experiment depending on how often we can get videos out. If you are one of those channels that can get out a weekly video, then yeah, I like to say 25%. So 1 video of that a month is dedicated to experimentation. And you stick with the core videos that grow your audience. If you don't know what really grows your audience, and you inverse that, and you do like 75% is experimentation and trying to see what works. It's very context dependent. So there's no rule here of like, okay, we do this instantly. Obviously, if you can only do 2 videos per month, you want to be a little bit more careful, because it depends on like how much of that YouTube channel is feeding into a business, for example. If you start experimenting, you could kill the amount of leads that go into your business. So it really does depend. For me, when it comes to like the video ideas, we have things that have worked previously on the channel. I like to start with those ideas first because they're essentially proven to your ideal viewer on a small channel. And so it's validated. You know that angle particularly works compared to looking at the outliers of other channels and competitors. That's great, but sometimes you're competing against competitors who have, big audiences. And so you can go, wow, this video got, 6 times the amount of views that they usually get, but sometimes it might not work with you. So it's better, I think, to start off with what works on your channel, with your target audience, with your face and your editing and your delivery and all the things. If it works for you, then there's probably something there that you could learn from and tweak and add to the next video. That's what I validate and start working on that. After that, I start to look at formats of other content that's performed well on competitor channels, and they sort of like go into an idea bank, which I would then start to experiment with. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I'll just start to go through that process of what is the unique angle, what could we, take from this competitor's video and add our own spin to it to make it our own, to provide value in a different way to our target audience, and then start to measure from there and essentially identify the levers that you need to pull on to make that video appealing to your target audience.
So the way that we find strong video ideas for the channels that we're working with is by taking inspiration from what's already working.
That's why 1of10.com has completely changed how we develop ideas for YouTube.
Just search for any channel, idea, or niche that you're interested in, and 1of10 will scour YouTube to show you which videos in those areas are massively outperforming the rest. You can use filters to see which videos are trending right now,
and then bookmark videos to see them all collected in a single place.
You can even track specific channels to see what's working for them over time.
So whether you're a beginner who's just looking for inspiration,
or as an experienced YouTuber trying to find the biggest viral trends,
1of10 is a game changer for YouTube ideation.
And you can get 20% off your subscription using the code MAKINGIT. Awesome. Okay, cool. This is super helpful. Like this is really, really, there are like some things that I'm kind of seeing, in parallel to the way I've been looking at things. And then, but it's good to check that like I'm not going way off course with this. And like I want to be like totally candid, and I was candid with this channel when I started with them, that this is not an area that I've kind of gone into before, but it's like this is just very, very helpful context. So yeah, appreciate you guys helping me out. So one thing that's come up, and I think I probably messaged you guys about this as it was going on, but this is like a general question for anyone really with YouTube, is how long after a video has been uploaded that is not necessarily doing particularly well, do you just accept that this video is one of those videos that must occur every so often that just doesn't do so well? So to give a bit of context, like there's a video that I was sort of joining the channel as it was coming out, and I had a look at the video just before it was uploaded. I didn't really have time, but I didn't have time to do anything with it apart from help with the packaging. But based on the topic, which they acknowledged was not particularly, didn't have a very big TAM, and the hook of this particular video,
addressable market for anyone who's interested. That's all the viewers could potentially be of interest to.
Yes, thank you. I was just trying to prove that I was in the strategy gang by knowing what lingo meant and just casually not even explaining what it meant. But so we accepted that the TAM was quite small. The hook was suboptimal in some ways. And generally, like looking at this video, there's a lot of me that was like, okay, this video was never going to be a 1 of 10, and it probably is never going to be a 1 of 10. However, there are plenty of examples, and you see it on Twitter all the time, where people will post a screenshot of a video that was just kind of flat, and then suddenly it exploded after 3 months, and they'll say, I always knew that this would happen, and it was just a case of patience. When do you guys stop making little fiddly tweaks with a video, like A/B testing titles, maybe chopping tiny little bits out in the YouTube studio where retention was bombing, and maybe that's probably a bad tactic anyway, but when do you give up on a video is the question.
This is a good question because there isn't a hard and fast rule that everyone has heard on a podcast about what to do in this case. I think this is the time when all your spidey senses come into play as a YouTube producer. I think it's a mix of how much time and effort did we put into this? How much do I feel in my gut that this is underperforming? Because the content itself is really good. Maybe you get that from, are the comments really positive? Are people sharing this a lot? And so then you're thinking, is the packaging dragging this down in some way? I can't quite put my finger on. Is it setting up weird expectations for people coming from browse that make them click away from this video, whereas they might have watched much longer if they'd come in with some other kind of different expectation? So I will be thinking about that. And then I'll be trying to figure out how much of my time it will take to figure out a new angle and what the value of that new angle might be. Like if it takes me a few hours to figure out a new angle and that gets me 20% extra views over the course of a year, would those few hours have been better spent on thinking about a new video that we can do? In most cases, I would argue that it probably is better spent on a new video, and that it's nice to win these battles. It's like going back in time and telling someone the retort you wish you'd said to them after they said that shit thing to you. But in most cases, just move on, tweet, learn. Yeah. Although it is a good way to kind of learn and grow by going back and fixing your mistakes. Just I guess, I don't know, chess players might review their past games to see what they should have done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you should always do that. As Gwilym said, tweak, I think is the best word there. As you start to learn a little bit more about your target audience, you might be able to go back to a video from a year ago and say, well, okay, that was clearly the wrong power word to use in a title, for instance. So we know that they respond to a certain kind of, pain point, or they have a certain kind of behavior that if we mention the outcome that they want, we get more clicks. So you can very much go back and update titles and thumbnails. I've done that and revived videos that were dead. And I've done that have revived videos that already had millions of views on, but kind of started to flatline. You can always go back and tweak things. I do think that it is a bit underrated. I think a lot of people don't do it. You always want to consider what are the angles that you're taking here. Because certain videos have different levels of awareness, right? Sometimes we always talk about you have growth videos and you have community videos. For those listening, community videos is more like your Q&As and your vlogs and things that are meant to sort of be for your core audience, your community, the people who are further down the funnel, who like you for you and are more interested in your day-to-day life or learning about Q&A because of you personally, compared to growth videos, which are way more orientated to high TAM, total addressable market. We're trying to get as many people as possible to be interested in this video because it's a growth video and we're trying to purposely grow the audience. That's how I like to separate those two types of videos in my mind. But sometimes you can go back and say, actually, we really packaged this for a community video, when actually this should be a growth video. Or we start off with the packaging being community orientated because we wanted to get a lot of people clicking in the early days, but now it's flatlined and actually we could probably start to repackage this to a wider audience. And, I like to think of the viewer's level of awareness very similar to product aware, solution aware, kind of the things that you get with in just normal products like SaaS and things like that, where you have people who are unaware. These are the people where you want to maybe have packaging that you update for those who don't know that they have a problem, don't really know you exist. That's kind of the ones where you're going to get the majority of views, but sometimes a little bit hard to target them. So you kind of want to use the angle of curiosity to pique their interest. Then you kind of have problem aware. These are the people who in your niche know that they have a problem, but they don't know of the solution. So this is where your packaging, you might want to update it to be more of if you want to lose weight, for example, you could then mention, this secret product. I saw people do this with Ozempic. Right, Ozempic, this new weight loss drug. People all around the world are struggling to lose weight. So you could update that packaging to be more problem aware, where you can say, blur out the Ozempic in your hands. And you can say, the miracle drug helping 100 million Americans lose weight. That is where they go, oh, I want to lose weight. How? They have that curiosity to click and find out. Then if you wanted, you could go a level deeper and go, okay, Ozempic now is a trending topic from 2 years ago when we uploaded that video. We should probably now use Ozempic in the title and thumbnail rather than keeping it as this mysterious thing, because now people have moved down into the solution aware stage where they know Ozempic is a real thing. So then you rebrand it into being Ozempic, right? And so you can kind of go down this process of just like looking at your old content and saying, what can be updated here? Where are my target audience? What have I learned over the last 2 years of uploading this content that I could go back and tweak that could get me more views? So yeah, there's like a variety of different strategies that you could do, but I do like going back and updating it, but I don't like it to take away from uploading new content because I do think that there's a lot to learn there. But sometimes the back catalog's huge. Go back and update it. Don't just upload and move on and never look back.
I think that's such an interesting point. And now you say that, I noticed, like I won't name them specifically, but you know, a celebrity who passed away recently, I then noticed an interview with them popping back up on my browse feed, and that they were then A/B testing new packaging around this person. And so like I kind of thought, oh wow, like they're, you know, with whatever it is, whether it's playing into something like your desire to lose weight or even just people's interest in something topical in the news or like whatever. I think I'm sort of noticing that sort of thing happening now on a video that was 3 years old, but now it was a trending topic again. Suddenly stuff was being edited, which was just really interesting to see.
Like an example of that as well is if you had evergreen content, like let's say someone who was like a yoga teacher and they uploaded in 2022 a video that kind of helped people at the beginning of the year. In January, people have this spike of, I want to take health more seriously. They might be searching, you know, I want to get into yoga this year. There could be packaging that's all centered around it being the beginning of the year. It's a 30-day challenge, do this thing. But if it's still packaged around 2022, no one's going to click it. But the content's evergreen. So it's still going to be, of value to people in 2024, 2025, 2026. So you should just go back and update that year, considering it's evergreen. And again, you could just reignite that video and get views on an annual basis.
George, I think I'm interested in not just the kind of ideation strategy side, because I feel like that's covered a lot in YouTube related podcasts, discussions, etc., because it's so easy to discuss in the abstract. What else are you kind of advising on or helping with that is more kind of nitty gritty? Like, I don't know, maybe you're talking about hiring or production processes. Yeah.
So in this case, I am doing basically as much as I possibly can because I want to make sure that the things that I'm doing in terms of the script are really carried through in terms of how they get edited. And we've got an amazing editor on this team. So I know they definitely have the capability, but it's just having that direct line of communication to make sure that I'm explaining myself well. And what I'm, say, writing in the hook is not filtered then through, say, the two creators on the channel's voice, and then it kind of gets to the editor with some uncertainties and, you know, things that maybe aren't super clear. Because from their side, I think they want to try and offload some of the stuff that takes them the most time. And certainly the script is one of those things. So I'm not writing the script in its entirety, but I am spending a lot of time. I'm basically writing the hooks where possible and giving them a lot of notes on the structure when they're kind of writing V1 of the script, because again, this link between, you know, the packaging, then through to the hook, then through to the structure, all of that stuff, I feel like that needs to happen in one big thrust. And you need to have a real sense of like, okay, how are we structuring this video? How do we set that up in the hook? And how do we present that in the packaging in the first place? So basically spending a lot of time focusing on the hook, liaising directly with the editor, and then liaising directly with thumbnail designers and coming up with the concepts myself as well. So, yeah, I think you just need to be so conscious of how interlinked all of these things are. And so that's why I want to kind of be in the weeds with that stuff where possible.
I think one thing that can help with that kind of situation where you need everyone to know what is really going on in the video so that they can all work, like kind of pull in the same direction, is 3-column scripts. So
yes, that's what we use. We're using one of those.
Perfect. Like first, like for people who don't know, the first column is what is being said or heard. Second column is what is being seen on screen. So graphics or just A-roll. And then third is usually like sources. I imagine with the channel you're working with, you won't be using sources that much. But yeah, that's super. I found that is super useful because thumbnail designers can look and they can see what all the visuals are going to be. Obviously, the editor can see what they should be putting in there and will ideally work with you on the script. And the creator also knows that if they change the script up, then there's going to be a lot of kind of knock-on effects of, okay, so if you want to change the script, what's the visual going to be that fits that? And it gets them thinking in those terms. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but yeah, I'm quite a fan of that.
Cool. Yeah, me too. So I had one other question I really wanted to ask you, and this is kind of now looking a bit more broadly. So whether this is when you're first starting working with a channel, or at any given point when you're working with a channel, or maybe you're just a YouTuber working on your own channel, how far ahead are you planning in terms of the schedule? So I'm in this position now where I know the sorts of videos that I really want to make over the next, say, 3 months, because at time of recording, we're in that kind of just before Christmas and then going through to like the January, New Year, New Me type thing. There's often with certain types of channel, there's a very distinct type of content you might want to be making around that time. So that feels quite easy for me right now to know what I want to make stuff about. But then how far ahead do you start looking? Do you want to make sure you know what all your concepts are going to be, say, for the next year, or are you really only ever looking 3-6 months ahead?
I have just been thinking about this very topic this morning, so I'm going to jump in again. So I think it depends so much on what your channel is about. If it's a tech channel, then, for example, and there are new kind of things being launched, then on the one hand, you have the uncertainty of not knowing quite what the content is going to be. So what is the new Samsung phone going to be like? You can't write the scripts months in advance, but you do know that it will be coming out, and therefore you should put aside time and you should definitely do that video. Maybe it comes out and there's nothing very new and it's not that interesting. So that's one scenario. But if you're a channel where the creator is not a full-time YouTuber, let's say you're doing a channel for Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're going to be dealing with a bunch of variables, like when are we actually going to have him there for filming time? Is there something going to happen in his life that's crazy? Like, I don't know, maybe there's some health problem, or he runs for president and everything changes in 2 months' time. How do you plan for that? And at the moment, I think in an ideal world, you would have like a spreadsheet with all the publishing dates for each video, all the tasks you need to do to get to that point, all the deadlines, like milestones you need to hit, and you just work through them. Maybe occasionally you change videos around, but and you extend your like time horizon as far as you can. But I think for most channels, that's not flexible enough. That doesn't let you change your ideas quickly based on how recent videos did. So I would say, honestly, probably working like 3 months ahead is already kind of looking further into the future than most channels. And I think the kind of the method I lean towards is having priorities. This is what we need to do to get things done in the next month. And then beyond that, it's more like there are different paths we could take and we should plan for contingencies. That was a long answer, but yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot.
It's reassuring to hear. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. Any thoughts, Jamie?
I like to look at sort of the trends of the year, depending on the niche that I'm in. You tend to have your global trends, like towards the end of the year, there might be like the best music albums of 2024. If you're a music channel, that's what you could do. The upcoming year, for at the beginning of the year, the best albums to look forward to in 2025. There are these times of the year where you might want to have more of a summer video that's ready to fit in there. I think like having these slots where ahead of time what's going to happen there allows you to plan ahead for it. But I also like to have like this just-in-time kind of cycle in terms of, we know that in a month's time, to Gwilym's point, this Samsung phone is coming out. We need to have time to work on that video the second that we get the information, so we can get it out just in time for the launch or for the announcement or whatever it may be. And then on top of that, you have your own videos that you make whenever. You have a list of that in your Notion database of like, these are your go-to videos when there are no trends, there are no outside factors, there are no certain seasonal videos that we need to make. Again, it depends on the niche. I've mentioned on this channel a few times, I work with a gardening channel. There's so many video ideas I come up with, and like, we can't do that till next April. And so you have to wait. Like, there's some video ideas it's taken us 2 years to get around to, just because you can't plant certain things at a time of year. So yeah, it's really context dependent, but I do like to look towards, what happens at this certain time of year when people have this spike, in barbecue food. If you're a cooking channel, you should start to make those towards the beginning of the summer, so you can, ride that trend over the summer period.
I think it definitely does make production go faster if people know not only what they're working on now, but what they will be working on afterwards. You're reading the Mr. Beast production document, when Mr. Beast wrote down all his practices. One thing that stood out to me was he was saying, if you're waiting on someone else to do something, don't just be like, oh, it's their problem. Like, they'll give it to me in a week's time. Like, check in. How far have you progressed? Is it still on track? Can you get it to me earlier? Having deadlines can help speed things up, but they can also slow things down if things could be done faster. And if there is a clear incentive for, if we get this thing done faster, we can then start on the other things and grow the channel faster than otherwise.
That was really, really good. Thank you.
Since you made it this far, we think that you'll love this episode where Gwilym and I talk about how we make our thumbnails.